Brennan, when you get on the phone with a new client, what are some of the questions that you ask and some of the answers that immediately tell you, hey, I want to work with them, I do not want to work with them?
If we say, would you be interested in trying X, irrespective of what X is, and they say that didn't work when we tried it last, or we don't have the time, that's a clear indicator that they're not prioritizing innovation. And innovation is the only way to stay relevant in business, and it always has been.
Hey, everybody, we're here with Brennen Bliss, founder of Propellic. Brennan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Joshua. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so now I understand you started this company before you were actually legally allowed to start the company, age-wise.
You know what? That is actually true. And last week, I went to visit my family in Dallas, and my father gave me the original incorporation paperwork because he didn't want it taking up space in his office anymore. But yes, no. So I was an entrepreneurial kid, started making websites at 14. That was now 12 years ago, and have spent the last 12 years building what eventually turned into Propellic, but that was more over the last 4 years.
Do you still have to pay royalties to your father, or does he own any equity?
No, it's all me. He is an amazing man that was incredibly helpful, but he was so happy to get his name off of something I was running as quickly as he possibly could when I turned 18.
I understand. Now you started it and you were originally in website dev and then you went into SEO and to ad spend. Tell us about that transition, that realization.
So high level, SEO was always my favorite. It's what I self-taught, and the reason was I was building websites when I was in high school, and to get more web design clients, I taught myself SEO. And then we got ranked very visibly for the term Dallas Web Development Companies, which is where I was based, and signed some rather large contracts. I don't know why these companies were willing to hire a 16-year-old, but that's a different conversation. And what ended up happening was I realized this SEO thing is really powerful. Or of course it was at the time. And I wanted to do more of that. So I just transitioned there. And then about in 2021, we said we're just going to work with the travel industry, and I'm happy to talk about that if that's interesting. But
Yeah.
when we did that, about a year later, we said, okay, well, now we've got the travel industry. Everybody's asking about paid. I understand a good amount about paid, and I know some incredible people that could build that department. So we built that, and now the business is about 50-50 paid and organic search and AI marketing.
Let's talk about the realization of and the power of specialization. You had your foot in with one client in travel, and then you went through a kind of a metamorphosis. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was 5 years ago, and I know right now my team is on a call with that same client that we're still working with, which is always makes my heart happy. So this book, The Business of Expertise, was written by a guy named David C. Baker. It talks about this concept that pattern recognition is equivalent to expertise. The only way to get pattern recognition is if you do the same thing over and over and over. And people value expertise. So the only way we were able to get there was to say we're only going to work with this one industry to increase our reps with that one industry. That industry happened to be travel because travel is the only industry I've found that can easily and consistently make people more diverse, accepting humans, which is something that's very important to me. Add to that this industry innovates so incredibly slowly. There is so much work that we can do, and there's so much thought leadership and so much we can contribute with research to this space. I want this industry to be more progressive in terms of its marketing and technology adoption, and that is our mission.
What are top three things, let's say, that a company should be thinking about in the travel space to promote their brand online?
I think at the very highest level, attribution right now, it's getting very, very difficult to understand where your travelers came from, how they found you, and how they booked. So creating a philosophy and a way to follow that, I think, is an incredibly important thing. At a very core level, everybody needs to be thinking about how search and discovery is changing. You look at a company like TripAdvisor, you look at a company like Expedia, the OTAs, they drive substantial portions of their traffic through search, paid and organic. And just 2 days ago, at the time of this recording, Google had their I/O conference and talked specifically about AI mode being the default of Google. Try AI mode. You will not see any blue links. You will not see websites to click on. Things are going to change and quickly. So companies need to be preparing for that. And then further, just AI adoption across the board for both efficiency gains and new things. Those are the three things I'd be focusing on. Attribution, number one. Number two is finding how to be visible in front of travelers. And then number three is finding efficiency gains and testing new things that leverage AI.
Where do you see the industry moving in the next 5 years, given all that's happening in terms of online ads and marketing?
It depends. We've got this really big conversation in travel about intermediation of everything. There's like 7 middlemen in every single transaction in travel. I would think that that might not necessarily continue to be the case. I think we might have some disintermediation the more people rely on their own AI chatbots that are able to find and purchase for them, which is happening right now. Like it is happening today. I think that that will result in more fragmentation potentially in the industry, which would be fun and interesting. I think primarily because the travel industry, what I look at it as a complete barbell where you have a bunch of small people, small companies, a few very middle-sized companies, and a large number of enterprise, and you just don't have anything in the middle. It's the inverse of a bell curve. I would like to see that smooth out so you have more diverse travel businesses. You let the smaller ones grow and the bigger ones maintain.
Let's take your vision and your desire to work in the travel industry, as you said, as the great, let's call it perspective deliverer, right? It gives people perspective, it gives people understanding of each other around the world. Accelerate that exponentially 10, 15 years. What do you see as the gift that the travel industry will give the world?
It depends on how well we handle over tourism. I think that's the most important consideration. Globalization has been an incredible thing for the past century. The amount of travel, the increase in travel, the increase in understanding of new cultures, it's amazing. And I wish I was born a little bit earlier so I could have seen the transition because I came into the world when we were post globalization. Like that's generally by 1999, which was the year I was born, things were pretty well accessible via air travel. I think that if we're able to distribute travelers to places that are not as popular, I think we can just perpetuate and continue the positive impact of travel. I think if we continue to isolate and centralize visitors into very specific destinations that are already overcrowded, we will see tourism continue to build a negative image.
What are some of the most exciting specialization travel kind of experiences you know of out there that you would
There's a
do if you
yeah,
could?
there's a company we work with called Quasar Expeditions that's off the coast of Ecuador, or they're not off the coast of Ecuador, but they are in Ecuador, and they also have an operation in Argentina. Of course, they do these beautiful, I think, 20 room or less, amazing old ship tours to the Galapagos. And I can't imagine somebody that does it better than them. I can't. Because that's all they do. That's really
Yeah.
all that they do, and they're exceptional at it. And it's a family-run company. They've been doing it for decades. It's it's amazing.
Okay, so you have an opportunity with your husband, maybe your dogs, maybe not, to go on the trip of a lifetime. Where are you going?
Me, Antarctica. Him doesn't want to go to Antarctica.
Yeah,
I
so okay, where's the happy medium on that?
uh Greenland?
Nice.
No, I think the Nordics would be the happy medium. The like Lapland, northern Finland, northern Norway, etc. Because there's something that fascinates me ever since I went to Iceland about northern and southern, far southern regions, and also there's something like risky, exciting about sailing the Drake Passage that I would love to do.
Destination travel, all the different destinations out there. You work with a bunch of them. Culturally, when you work with some versus others, do you notice a difference in the way that they operate in different, let's say, different countries that you help?
Huh. I think everybody thinks this US is like a promised land. And that's our specialty is targeting US consumers. There's 350 million of them. They all purchase in a very unique way. It's very different from other countries. It's a much more competitive landscape than other countries, um, at least in our experience. And that's across about 60 different clients. But I would say that um, the difference is going to be the willingness to take risk, far more substantial in the US than outside of the US. The willingness to test something and lose some money.
So a US business client, for example, is much more interested and open to taking risks in their way they do marketing and ad spend than perhaps overseas
Yeah.
vendors.
Which doesn't come as that big of a surprise. The U.S. is a breeding ground for entrepreneurship, right? That's the lifeblood of this country. Capitalism and entrepreneurship have been what created this country. So I think that makes sense. Whereas things move a little bit slower in some European countries, which is the primary other market that we work with.
Do you have a specific example of a campaign that you think the US client would go for that definitely would not have been something they would have adopted in Europe?
Um, I know how I invest, um, and I take risk, which I've got a broken risk meter, to be quite honest. I love testing new things, and that's kind of, that's what makes business fun for me. I would say an example would be TikTok, where there's lacking attribution. So you can't easily measure financial impact, but you can get an anecdotal or incrementality study done. Um, in the US, that is not a problem at all. Let's try it and see what happens.
Mhm.
In Europe, which is again the primary alternative market we work with, there's less tolerance for something like that.
I would think that's a handicap, as you talked about, with attribution being a growing problem for companies that are sitting there as telling their marketing person, "You got to tell me how much I'm getting on my ROI for that." They're kind of they're almost kind of stagnant. They can't. They're paralyzed.
Yeah. Well, I think that the whole world has forgotten about brand marketing. And I'm one of those too, because we don't do brand marketing in Propelic. We're a performance marketing firm. I think that I brought up Intrepid. I'll bring Intrepid up again. I think they've done an exceptional job, and much credit to Lee Barnes, who is on our podcast at Propelic, talking about their brand campaigns and their substantial investments into creative and distribution out of home. That you don't actually need to be able to track everything in marketing. If you need to track everything in marketing and have everything have a direct ROI return, you're never going to take risk. You're never going to try the new things. You're never going to find alpha above the beta of the market. And you also can't create demand without performance. I mean, without brand marketing. So if people don't know the category, how in the world are you ever going to you're going to create enough demand for your performance marketing to work? So I think that I'm kind of secretly excited about the attribution ability getting more and more messy, because I think it's going to make brands more interesting and more fun.
So in terms of ad spend internationally, are there arbitrage opportunities, and is there some kind of guidance you have in that space?
So I've never used the word arbitrage for it, but that does make sense. I would say generally at the top of this conversation, I said that the US is a much more competitive market. And I've had that conversation actually twice today with two different companies, and it's only 11:26 a.m. for me. I would argue that due to the level of competition in the US and everybody thinking it's the promised land for advertising, you're going to get much cheaper placements outside of the US. Because the US is a more competitive market, people want to target it because it's a much larger market. So targeting the UK, you have a tenth the reach that you can possibly accomplish in the US. And the US is generally the people who are outbound traveling to South and Central America, which is a massive adventure tourism area. And then again, Europe is a primary destination for US. It's just a large population. Same with China. Although advertising is much more difficult in China due to platform restrictions and accessibility outside of the country.
Do you have any quick like little hacks or things that you're like, hey, you know what, you should all do this? Like when you stop listening to this podcast, you should go do this for your company.
If you're not preparing for the future of AI, you need to be. Number one, make sure you're not blocking AI crawlers from your website in your robots.txt file. That's a super nerdy thing. But if you need to learn more about that, just go look up Repelic's YouTube and watch the podcast, watch the webinar. Start looking at your external branded mentions, which basically means how often are you mentioned by people who are not you on the internet. That's going to drive more AI recommendations, which eventually will be the way that people discover travel. Right now, it's 50% referral and family and friend referral in social. And then the other 50% is either the messy middle where you can't track it, or it's search and social. I think the search and social component is going to be replaced by, or at least the search component is going to be replaced by AI visibility.
Are there any specific tools that you recommend for doing this?
We are building one. It'll be ready in 2 months. I just opened the C Corp 2 days ago and put the money in the bank account. There,
Nice.
there are tools in the meantime if you're itching to get it. There's one called Scrunch. There's one called Profound. They're for
Let's
trying.
wait for your tool.
I need this industry to move faster. There are
Yeah.
not very many innovative companies in travel, to be honest.
Let's talk about geopolitical headwinds. Have you seen an impact on travel industry, and what do you see as the future or the next, let's say, 5 years or 4 years,
3.5.
3.5?
um, so yes, headwinds. We haven't had any clients with, well, we've had a couple of clients that have gotten into some pretty particularly precarious situations, and those are the ones that are servicing inbound to the U.S. travel from other countries primarily. So if you're a
Mhm.
domestic U.S. operator serving U.S. customers, you're pretty much fine right now, especially if you serve younger crowds that haven't seen, much fluctuation in their retirement balances. The headwinds are primarily affecting people who target international travelers to the U.S.
Is this current phase of strong headwinds and challenges helping to accelerate their need to modernize?
It's accelerating the need. I don't know that it's accelerating the companies though,
Interesting.
which is why I see fragmentation as a potential. I think some of the big companies are going to get shaken up. Um,
Okay.
the larger the company is, the harder it is to get a new technology to the core of the company.
Brennan, when you get on the phone with a new client, what are some of the questions that you ask and some of the answers that immediately tell you, hey, I want to work with them, I do not want to work with them?
If we say, would you be interested in trying X, irrespective of what X is, and they say that didn't work when we tried it last, or we don't have the time, that's a clear indicator that they're not prioritizing innovation. And innovation is the only way to stay relevant in business, and it always has been. Eventually, you'll be BlackBerry or Nokia. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nobody is permanently safe. Apple's having this reckoning, Google's having this reckoning. Apple to a lesser extent, of course, but certainly on their AI components, they are really not doing well in that respect.
Yeah.
But I think that innovation is absolutely needs to be at the core. And if it's not, then that's what's going to result in the fragmentation we're talking about.
Brennen Bliss, founder of Propellic, thank you very much for having this conversation with us. I plan to actually see you on the road very soon.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah.
I don't typically people just ask me about like specific tactical things in marketing, and this was fun because I got to talk about more macroeconomic and geopolitical considerations, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, that's what I mean, with the vanbassador obviously coming from the former commercial diplomat side, I'd like to talk about where the world's at. And also just we want to know who you are and what drives you.